On April 1st, 2025, the world lost one of the most enigmatic and gifted actors of his generation, Val Kilmer, a legend whose presence stretched from the silver screen to the quiet corners of American stagecraft. Known for iconic roles in Tapu, Gun, The Doors, Tombstone, Batman Forever, and countless others, Kilmer was more than just a leading man. He was a force. But in the quiet days that followed his passing, one of the most touching tributes didn't come from the directors or the critics. It came from an unlikely friend, comedian and actor Will Forte. What began as a working relationship on the 2010 cult film MacGruber blossomed into something truly rare in Hollywood, an authentic, deeply personal friendship. In this story, we go deep into the heart of that friendship, into Val's lasting legacy, and into the laughter, awkwardness, and brilliance that only those closest to him ever truly saw. This is the story of Will Forte's tribute to Val Kilmer. A meeting. Of two different worlds on paper, Will Forte and Val Kilmer should not have become close. One was a former Saturday Night Live cast member known for absurdist comedy, while the other was a dramatic heavyweight who once studied at Juilliard. But the magic happened on the set of MacGruber, a spoof action movie that, ironically, turned into a surprisingly heartfelt collaboration. When Forte was casting the film, he had one villain in mind, Val Kilmer. Not just because of the name recognition, but because of the sheer unpredictability he brought to the screen. "I was obsessed with Tombstone," Forte once said. "His performance as Doc Holliday, it was a masterclass. You could just see this incredible control and fire all in one character." To Forte's surprise, Kilmer accepted the role of the villain, Dieter von Kuntz, and with that, the journey began. On set. The birth of a friendship. During the filming of MacGruber, Kilmer quickly broke any illusions that he was too serious. For a project like this, quite the opposite, he embraced the absurdity with open arms. He brought an improvisational spirit that elevated the entire set. "He was one of the funniest people on set," Forte said. "You'd expect him to be this intimidating presence, but he was like a kid in a candy store." Forte was amazed at Kilmer's commitment to the comedic elements. He wasn't phoning it in. He was fully immersed, constantly coming up with new lines, pushing scenes further and cheering others on. Behind the scenes, they'd laugh, share stories, and just hang out. The distance between comedy and drama began to collapse, and in its place was camaraderie. An unplanned roommate. The story of Val and Will took an unexpected turn after the movie wrapped. Due to a real estate dispute with his landlord in Malibu, Kilmer found himself temporarily without a home. Without hesitation, Will offered him a place to stay. He thought it would be for a weekend. It turned into 2.5 months. "I came home one day," Forte recalled, "and Val had transformed my guest room into this little artist's den. Books everywhere, papers, a miner's headlamp. He was reading Mark Twain with this huge contraption on his head. It was surreal. Two men from totally different backgrounds, sharing a house like college roommates." Forte described their time living together as something out of The Odd Couple, with Kilmer being the chaotic creative genius and Will the straight man trying to keep the house running. "Every morning was an adventure," Forte laughed. "You'd wake up and Val would be cooking something bizarre or doing yoga in the hallway or rehearsing monologues. He lived in the moment. The Amazing Race and The Road Not Taken." One of the funniest and most unexpected parts of their friendship was their mutual obsession with The Amazing Race. At first, Forte had the TV on in the background, and Kilmer walked by skeptically. "What is this?" he asked, but by the 3rd episode he was hooked. Not only that, he wanted to go on the show. "Seriously, Will," Val said one day, "we would crush this. We balance each other out. I've got the intuition, you've got the logic." Forte agreed. They started brainstorming strategies, watching episodes like homework. But when they floated the idea to their agents and managers, they were quickly shot down. No way, they were told. It's career suicide. Looking back, Fort said it's one of his biggest regrets, that they never signed up for that wild journey together. Because for a brief moment, it was real. And it was not. About fame or media, it was just two friends chasing something ridiculous and beautiful. The artist behind the actor. What stood out most to Fort was not just Kilmer's eccentricities, it was his soul. Despite being an internationally recognized star, Kilmer lived like an artist who'd never lost his curiosity. He was constantly working on something. Plays, poems, paintings, philosophical essays. During his stay at Fort's home, he was preparing for his one-man show as Mark Twain. Every day he practiced, revised, experimented. He did not just act, he transformed, Fort explained. He'd vanish into these characters. You could feel the energy shift. Even after his diagnosis with throat cancer in 2015, Kilmer never stopped creating. He lost much of his voice, but not his spirit. Through technology and voice replication, he kept performing, kept inspiring. Humor and humanity. The other side of Val Kilmer. Public perception of Kilmer has always been a mixed bag. For years, he was painted as difficult, aloof, even impossible to work with. But Fort saw something else, something warmer. People would hear he was staying at my house and say, "Oh man, that must be intense." But it wasn't. It was fun. He was goofy. He was kind. Fort remembers one moment in particular. Kilmer had cooked a giant, overly complex dinner that nobody could quite identify. The flavors were odd, the texture confusing, but he served it with pride. And the thing is, Fort said, we ate every bite, because that was Val. He put everything into what he did, whether it was a movie or a random Tuesday dinner. You respected the effort. Saying goodbye, when Val Kilmer passed away in April 2025, it was not just a loss for Hollywood, it was a deeply personal loss for Will Fort. In interviews and on social media, Fort's tribute was not flashy. It wasn't polished, it was real. He wrote, "Val was not just a brilliant actor. He was one of the most vibrant people I have ever met. Life was brighter when he was around. We laughed more, thought deeper, and yes, ate stranger food. I'll miss you, my friend." Those words rang true for everyone who ever caught a glimpse of the real Val Kilmer. The final legacy Kilmer's career was never about being liked. It was about being true to the role, to the moment, to the emotion. Whether playing Iceman, Jim Morrison, Batman, or a spoof villain named Kunth, he gave everything. Will Fort's tribute reveals a side of Val Kilmer the public rarely saw. The friend, the philosopher, the mischief maker, the dreamer, someone who lived 100 lives in one and still had time to binge The Amazing Race and plan imaginary travel routes through foreign cities. In the final analysis, the legacy of Val Kilmer isn't just in the roles he played, but in the people he touched. People like Will Fort, who never expected to be his roommate, his teammate, or his brother in arms, but ended up being all three. In the days after Val Kilmer's death, the world replayed his greatest hits. They watched him confront Tom Cruise. They remembered his drawl in Tombstone. They rediscovered his intensity in Heat. But for Will Fort, the greatest memory was not a film scene. It was the laughter at midnight, the random headlamp readings, the poorly cooked meals, and the crazy dream of winning The Amazing Race. That's the Val Kilmer he knew. That's the Val Kilmer we all should remember.